Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly across the bridge of the USS Defiance. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The ship was quiet except for the low hum of the engines. Outside the windows, stars looked like tiny diamonds against the black of space. Jake was 35 years old and had been in the Earth Navy for 15 years. He had brown hair and green eyes. His face showed the calm look of someone who had seen many battles. But today felt different. Today something big was going to happen. "Captain," said Commander Lisa Park from her seat at the weapons station, "we are getting close to the target area." Lisa was a small woman with black hair pulled back tight. She was the best weapons officer in the Earth Navy. Her fingers moved quickly over the control buttons. Jake nodded and walked over to look at that. The main screen. The screen showed a map of space around them. Red dots marked where they were going. 3 days ago, Earth Command had sent them a message. Strange energy readings were coming from this part of space. No one knew what was causing them. "How long? Until we get there?" Jake asked. "Sir," said Amy Stone from the navigation station. Amy was young, only 24, but she could pilot a ship better than anyone. Her blonde hair fell over her shoulders as she worked. Jake looked around his bridge. These people were his crew. They trusted him to keep them safe. The Defiance was not like other Earth ships. It was smaller and faster. While other ships were built like flying rocks, the Defiance was built like a hunting bird. "Ben, how are the engines?" Deke called to the back of the bridge. Chief Engineer Ben Carter looked up from his station. Ben was a big man with thick arms and a beard. He had been fixing engines since he was 16. "Running smooth, Captain? The new fusion drives are working better than we hoped." Jake smiled a little. Earth had spent 10 years building this ship. It used new technology that no other race in the galaxy had. The ship could move faster and turn quicker than anything else in space. But it had never been tested in real battle. The galaxy was a big place with many different races. Most of them belonged to something called the Galactic Coalition. The coalition was supposed to keep peace between all the different worlds. But some races did not care about peace. The worst of these was the Keth Empire. The Keth were tall, gray-skinned beings with sharp teeth. They lived to fight and conquer. They had taken over dozens of worlds. The coalition was afraid of them. When the Keth attacked someone, the coalition usually looked the other way. Captain Lisa said suddenly, "I'm getting readings on the long-range sensors." Jake walked quickly to her station. "What kind of readings?" Lisa's face went pale. "Ships, sir. Lots of them. At least 500, maybe more." The bridge went quiet. 500 ships was more than the entire Earth Navy. Jake felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his voice calm. "Can you tell what kind of ships?" Lisa worked at her controls for a moment. Then she looked up with fear in her eyes. "They're Keth ships, Captain. It's a whole fleet." Jake closed his eyes for a second. The Keth Empire had never come this close to human space before. "What were they doing here, Amy?" "Take us closer, but keep us hidden," Jake ordered. "I want to see what they're up to." The Defiance moved forward like a ghost. Its special hull coating made it hard for other ships to see on their sensors. As they got closer, the main screen showed what was happening. Jake felt sick to his stomach. The Keth fleet was surrounding a small planet. The planet was home to a race called the Valen. The Valen were peaceful people who made beautiful art and music. They had never hurt anyone. They didn't even have weapons. "Captain," said Ryan Blake from the communications station. Ryan was thin with red hair and glasses. "I'm picking up transmissions from the planet. The Valen are asking for help." They're scared. Jake watched the screen. The Keth ships were huge, dark things that looked like flying fortresses. Each one was 3 times bigger than the Defiance. They had enough firepower to turn the planet below into dust. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "the Keth are sending a message to the planet. They're telling the Valen to surrender or be destroyed." Knew what this meant. The Keth didn't just kill people. It took them as slaves. The Valen would spend the rest of their lives working in Keth mines and factories. Their beautiful culture would be destroyed forever. Captain Amy said, "We should call Earth Command. Tell them what's happening here." Jake nodded slowly. "Ryan, send a message to Earth. Tell them we found a Keth fleet attacking the Valen homeworld." Ryan worked at his station. After a few minutes, he shook his head. "Sir, it will take 3 days for our message to reach Earth, even if they send help right away. It won't get here for a week." Jake looked at the screen again. The Keth ships were moving closer to the planet. Soon they would start landing troops. The Valen had maybe hours left as free people. Captain Ben said from his station, "What are your orders?" Jake knew what the rulebook said. When faced with superior forces, retreat and call for backup. Don't risk your ship and crew for others. The Galactic Coalition had the same rule. That's why the Keth kept winning. Everyone was too afraid to fight them. But Jake thought about the Valen on that planet. Families holding each other, knowing that their children would grow up as slaves, artists who would never paint again, musicians who would never sing. He thought about his own daughter back on Earth. What if it was her planet being attacked? If someone had the power to help but chose to run away instead? Jake made his decision. "Lisa, power up all weapons systems. Amy, plot a course that takes us right into the middle of their fleet. Ben, I want every bit of power you can give me." His crew stared at him. Lisa was the first to speak. "Captain, there are 500 ships out there. We're just one ship." Jake looked at each of them. "I know the odds, but those people down there don't have anyone else. We're all they've got." Ben smiled and started working on his controls. "You heard the captain. Show these Keth what humans can do." Amy began plotting their course. "I can get us into their formation before they—" "No, we're there." Lisa powered up the weapons. "All systems ready, Captain?" "Okay." Ryan opened a channel to the Keth fleet. "Sir, you're connected." Jake stood in the center of his bridge. He thought about all the battles humans had fought throughout history. Sometimes, someone had to stand up to bullies, no matter how big they were. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy ship Defiance," he said into the communicator. His voice was clear and strong. "You have 1 hour to leave this system. If you don't, we will remove you ourselves." The channel went quiet. Then Jake heard something that chilled his blood. It was the sound of Keth laughter. Dark, cruel laughter. That said, they thought humans were fools. The leader of the Keth fleet spoke. His voice was like broken glass. "Little human, you must be crazy. I am Supreme Admiral Vexka of the Keth Empire. I have 500 ships. You have 1. Run away now, or we will crush you like an insect." Jake looked at his crew. They were scared, but they were ready. These were Earth's finest. They would. "Not run, Admiral," Jake said calmly. "You have 59 minutes. He cut the channel and turned to his crew. "All right, people. Let's go save a world." Supreme Admiral Vexka could not believe what he had just heard. In his 40 years of conquest, no one had ever dared to speak to him that way. His gray skin turned darker with anger. His sharp teeth showed as he snarled at the communication. "Screen, did that human just threaten me?" he asked his bridge crew. The other Keth officers looked at each other with confusion. They had conquered entire star systems. They had crushed fleets 10 times bigger than this single human ship. "We're," said his weapons officer, "their ship is very small. Our sensors show it has maybe 200 crew members. We have over 100,000 warriors in our fleet." Vexka laughed again, but this time it was not as confident. Something about the human captain's voice bothered him. The human had sounded calm, like he actually believed he could win. "Send a message to the fleet," Vexka ordered. "All ships move into attack formation. We will destroy this human ship quickly, and we can get back to taking the planet." On board the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison watched the Keth fleet begin to move. The massive ships turned slowly toward them. Their dark hulls blocked out the stars as they came closer. Captain Lisa Park said from her weapons station, "I'm counting 512 enemy ships. 24 dreadnoughts, 48 battleships, and the rest are cruisers and destroyers." Jake nodded. Each dreadnought could probably destroy his ship with one shot, but he had studied Keth's tactics for years. They were powerful, but they were also predictable. They always did the same thing. They formed a big wall of ships and tried to smash their enemy with pure firepower. Amy Jake said to his navigator, "I need you to plot a course that takes us right through the center of their formation. Make it fast and unpredictable." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Course plotted, Captain. But sir, if we go through the middle, they'll hit us from all sides." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," Jake said with a small smile. "Ben, I need everything the engines can give us. I mean everything." Chief Engineer Ben Carter grinned and started rerouting power. "You got it, Captain? I'm taking power from life support, artificial gravity, everything we don't absolutely need. This baby is going to fly like nothing you've ever seen," Lisa Jake continued. "I want you to target their biggest ships first. Don't try to destroy them, completely hit their engines and weapons. Make them unable to fight." Lisa's hands moved over her targeting controls. The Defiance had weapons unlike anything else in the galaxy. Instead of energy beams like most ships used, it fired solid metal slugs at incredible speed. The slugs were small, but they hit with the force of a small bomb. "Ryan," Jake said to his communications officer, "I want you to monitor all frequencies. The moment this fight starts, every government in the galaxy is going to be watching." Ryan adjusted his equipment. "Already picking up chatter, Captain. Coalition knows what's happening here. So do the Zephyrians, the Altarians, and about 20 other races." Jake took a deep breath. This was it. In a few minutes, they would either save the Valen people or die trying. But at least the galaxy would see that someone was willing to fight the Keth. "All stations report ready," Jake announced. "Weapons ready," Lisa called out. "Engines at maximum." "Power," Ben reported. "Course laid in," Amy said. "Communications standing by, Ryan," added Jake. Looked at the main screen one more time. The Keth fleet was almost in position. Soon they would open fire with enough weapons to destroy a small moon. "All right, people," Jake said quietly. "Let's show them what humans can do. Amy, take us in." The Defiance shot forward like a bullet. The sudden acceleration pushed everyone back in their seats. Outside the windows, the stars turned into streaks of light as they picked up speed. The Keth fleet was not ready for this. They expected the human ship to either run away or take a defensive position. They did not expect it to attack. The human ship was moving so fast that their targeting computers could not keep up. "Fire at will," Jake ordered. Lisa's fingers hit the firing controls. The Defiance's railgun spoke with a sound like thunder. 6 metal slugs shot out at a speed close to light itself. They crossed the space between the ships in less than a second. The slugs hit the lead Keth dreadnought right in the center. Massive ship's shields flared and failed. The slugs punched through the hull like it was made of paper. Explosions bloomed along the ship's side as systems failed, and atmosphere vented into space. "Direct hit," Lisa shouted. "Our main weapons are offline, but the Keth were not helpless." Hundreds of energy beams reached out toward the Defiance. The space around the human ship lit up like a deadly light show. Most of the shots missed because the Defiance was moving too fast and turning too quickly. The shots that did hit struck the ship's shields. But these were not ordinary shields. Earth scientists had designed them to absorb energy and spread it out across the entire ship. Instead of taking all the damage in one place, the shields shared it around. "Shields holding at 60%, Ben called out. But we can't take much more of this. Jake was ready for that. Amy, execute Maneuver 7. Amy had practiced this move 100 times in simulations. She pulled the ship into a sharp turn that would have crushed a normal crew. But the Defiance had special systems to protect them. From the forces of extreme movement, the ship spun around the Keth formation like a dancer. As it moved, Lisa kept firing. Each shot was perfectly aimed. Another dreadnought lost its engines. A battleship's weapons exploded in a chain reaction. Supreme. Admiral Vexka watched in horror as his mighty fleet was being torn apart by one small ship. "How is this possible?" he screamed. "Focus all fire on that ship. Destroy it now." Got his. Orders were easier to give than to follow. The human ship was moving in ways that seemed impossible. It would appear on one side of the formation, fire a devastating shot, then vanish before anyone could hit it back. "Sir," his tactical officer said with fear in his voice, "we've lost 6 dreadnoughts and 12 battleships. The human ship is using tactics we've never seen before." On the planet below, the Valen people watched the battle in amazement. They had no weapons of their own, so they had never seen space combat before. To them, it looked like a single bright star was dancing around a dark cloud, and every time they touched, the cloud got smaller. The leader of the Valen, an elderly being named Keeper Nala, sent a message toward the human ship. "Brave warriors of Earth," she said, "we do not know why you risk yourselves for us, but we will remember this forever." Jake heard the message, but he could not answer right now. The battle was getting harder. More Keth ships were turning to face them. Soon, they would be surrounded completely. Captain Lisa said, "I'm reading massive energy buildup from their flagship. I think they're preparing their main weapon." Jake knew about Keth's flagship weapons. They could destroy an entire city with one shot. If that beam hit the Defiance, there would be nothing left but atoms. "Ben, I need more speed," Jake said. "I'm giving you everything we have," Ben replied. "The engines are running past their safety limits, and we'll have to be smarter instead of faster," Jake said. He looked at the tactical display and saw something that might work. It was dangerous, but everything they were doing was dangerous. "Amy, plot a course that takes us right at their flagship. Make it look like we're going to ram them." Amy's eyes went wide, but she started working. "Course plotted, Captain. But if we actually hit them, we'll both be destroyed." Jake smiled grimly. "That's the idea. Lisa, charge up everything we have. I want one massive shot ready to fire." The Defiance turned toward the Keth flagship and accelerated to its maximum speed. To everyone watching, it looked like the human captain had gone crazy and decided to ram the enemy command ship. Vexka saw the human ship coming straight at him. "He's lost his mind," the admiral shouted. "All ships, fire everything at that ship." Energy. Beams from dozens of ships reached out toward the Defiance. The space between the ships became a wall of deadly light. The wall of energy beams from the Keth fleet lit up space like a deadly rainbow. Every weapon in the enemy formation was firing at the Defiance as it raced toward the flagship. The human ship looked tiny against the massive wall of fire coming toward it. On bridges across the galaxy, military leaders watched the battle through their long-range sensors. They all thought the same thing. Humans were brave, but they were about to die. Captain Jake Morrison felt the ship shake as energy. Blasts hit their shields. Warning lights flashed red all around the bridge. The sound of alarms mixed with the roar of overloaded engines. "Shields down to 20%. Ben Carter shouted from his engineering station. Sweat ran down his face as he tried to keep the ship together. 10 seconds to impact," Amy Stone called out. Her hands gripped the flight controls so tight her knuckles were white. Jake watched the Keth flagship grow larger on the main screen. He could see the details of its dark hull. Gun ports. Sensor arrays. And right in the center, the bridge where Supreme Admiral Vexka was probably screaming orders. "Lisa, fire everything we have," Jake ordered. Now, Lisa Park's fingers slammed down on the firing controls. Every weapon on the Defiance fired at. The same moment, 6 railgun slugs, 4 missile tubes, and 2 experimental plasma cannons all discharged their deadly cargo. But instead of hitting the flagship, something else happened. At the last second, Amy pulled the ship into a sharp turn that nearly tore it apart. The Defiance spun away from the flagship like a leaf in a hurricane. The weapons fire that had been meant for the flagship kept going. It struck 3 Keth battleships that had been directly behind their command ship. The concentrated firepower from the Defiance's entire arsenal tore through the surprised vessels like paper. Supreme. Admiral Vexka realized he had been tricked. The humans had never planned to ram his ship. They had used his own fleet's formation against them. By making him order all ships to fire at one target, he had created a clear corridor for the human weapons. Clever, he hissed through his sharp teeth, but you only delayed your death. On the Defiance, Jake's crew was working like a machine. Every person knew exactly what to do. They had trained for this moment for years, even though none of them had expected to face odds this bad. Captain Ryan Blake called from his communications station. I'm getting messages from all over the galaxy. The Altarian Trade Federation is mobilizing ships to help us.
Oh.
So are the Centauri colonies. Jake nodded, but he knew help would not arrive in time. This battle would be over long before any allies could reach them. They were on their own. How many enemy ships have we taken out? He asked. Lisa checked her displays. Confirmed kills on 15 ships. Maybe 20 more are badly damaged and can't fight. That meant they had destroyed or crippled about 35 ships out of 500. It was good, but not nearly enough. The Keth still had overwhelming numbers. Captain Amy said urgently, they're changing formation. The smaller ships are spreading out to surround us. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Keth were learning. Instead of staying in one big group, they were forming a sphere around the Defiance. No matter which way the human ship turned, it would face enemy fire. Smart, Jake said quietly. But we've got something they don't expect. He pressed a button on his command chair. Throughout the ship, speakers crackled to life. And this is the captain speaking, Jake announced. Launch all fighters. Deep in the belly of the Defiance, 12 small attack craft powered up their engines. Each fighter was only big enough for one pilot, but they were faster and more maneuverable than anything. Else in space, Lieutenant Commander Sam Torres led the fighter squadron. He was a small man with quick reflexes and nerves of steel. He'd been flying since he was 16 years old. It's Phoenix Squadron. This is Phoenix Leader, Sam said into his radio. Time to show these aliens what Earth pilots can do. The 12 fighters shot out of the Defiance like bullets from a gun. They scattered in all directions, each pilot choosing their own target. The Keth had never seen anything like them. The fighters moved like angry wasps around the massive Keth ships. They were too small for the big guns to hit, but their weapons could punch holes in the larger vessel's armor. They targeted engines, weapons, and sensor arrays. I got one, called out Lieutenant Jenny Martinez as her fighters' missiles destroyed a Keth destroyer's main engines. The enemy ship began to drift helplessly through space. 2 more down here, reported Lieutenant Bobby Chen. His fighter danced between the gun turrets of a Keth cruiser, firing precision shots that left the bigger ship blind and nearly powerless. Supreme, Admiral Vexka watched in growing fury as these tiny human craft swarmed around his fleet. How many of these insects do they have? He demanded. Only 12, sir, his tactical officer replied. But they're moving too fast for our weapons to track. Then use the plasma nets, Vexka ordered. Trap them. Several Keth ships fired special weapons that created webs of energy in space. These nets were designed to catch fast-moving targets. 2 of the human fighters flew right into the traps. Phoenix 7 is caught. It's called Lieutenant Alex Rivera. I can't break free. Phoenix 9 is trapped too, reported Lieutenant Carol Thompson. My engines are shutting down, but Sam Torres had an idea. All fighters concentrate fire on the net generators. If we destroy the projectors, the nets will collapse. The remaining 10 fighters turned their weapons on the Keth ships that were not creating the energy nets. Their combined firepower overwhelmed the projector systems. The nets flickered and disappeared, freeing the trapped pilots. Meanwhile, Defiance continued its deadly dance around the Keth fleet. Jake had figured out something important about his enemies. They were used to fighting other races that used the same tactics they did, big ships in straight lines, trading heavy fire until one side was destroyed. But humans fought differently. They used speed and surprise. They attacked from unexpected angles. Most importantly, they never did the same thing twice. Amy, take us under their formation, Jake ordered. Lisa, target the ship's belly armor. It's always the weakest part. The Defiance dove below the Keth fleet like a submarine going deep. The enemy ships had to rotate to keep their guns pointed at the human vessel. This slow turning made them perfect targets. Lisa's railguns fired again and again. Each shot was carefully aimed at the weakest parts of the enemy ships. Hull plates flew off into space. Atmosphere vented from ruptured compartments. Several smaller ships exploded completely when their reactors were hit. But the battle was taking its toll on the human ship too. The Defiance had been hit dozens of times. Parts of the hull were glowing red-hot from energy beam strikes. Some sections had holes torn right through them. Captain Ben called out, "We're losing coolant in the port engine, in the starboard. Railgun is jammed." Jake felt the ship shudder as another energy blast hit them. They were running out of time. The Keth were slowly getting better at predicting their movements. Soon the superior numbers would win. That's when Ryan Blake picked up something on his communications equipment. "Captain, I'm getting a signal from the edge of the system. It's Earth Command." Jake's heart jumped. Had reinforcements arrived? Put them on screen. The main display showed the face of Admiral Karen Walsh, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet. She was an older woman with gray hair and steel-blue eyes. Behind her, Jake could see the bridge of her flagship. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Walsh said. "This is Admiral Walsh aboard the carrier Yorktown. We received your message and came as fast as we could. We have 12 ships with us." Jake felt a surge of hope, but then he looked at his tactical display. 12 ships was good, but the Keth still outnumbered them by more than 30 to 1. Admiral Jake replied, "Glad to see you, but I hope you have a plan. We're a little outnumbered here." Admiral Walsh smiled grimly. "Oh, we have a plan, Captain. And we brought some friends." Suddenly, Jake's sensors began picking up new signals. Ships were coming out of hyperspace all around the system. It's not just Earth ships, but vessels from a dozen different races. The cavalry had arrived. Ships kept appearing out of hyperspace like ghosts becoming real. Jake Morrison watched his sensor display fill up with friendly contacts. The 12 Earth ships were joined by vessels from races he had only read about in history books. Massive Zephyrian cruisers dropped out of hyperspace, their crystal hulls glowing with inner light. The Zephyrians were the oldest race in the galaxy. They almost never got involved in other people's wars. Behind them came a formation of Altarian, merchant ships that had been quickly armed with weapons. The Altarians were traders, not fighters, but they had decided that some things were worth fighting for. Even more surprising were the 6 ships from the Rigel Confederacy. The Rigel people were known for staying out of everyone else's business, but here they were, ready to fight alongside the humans. Captain Ryan Blake said from his communications station, "I'm getting signals from 23 different races. They're all here to help us." Jake felt a strange mix of emotions. He was grateful for the help, but he was also amazed. All these different people had come to fight for strangers they had never met. Supreme Admiral Vexka stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Minutes ago, he had been winning. Now his fleet was surrounded by enemies from all across the galaxy. "How did they get here so fast?" he demanded. His communications officer looked terrified. "Sir, they're saying they came because of the humans. They're calling it the greatest act of courage they've ever seen." Vexka's gray skin turned darker with rage. One human ship had somehow turned the entire galaxy against him. But he was not ready to give up. The Keth Empire had never retreated from a battle. "All ships," he ordered, "ignore the other vessels. Focus everything on destroying that human ship. If we kill their leader, the others might run away." The Keth fleet turned all their guns toward the Defiance. Hundreds of energy beams reached out across space like deadly fingers. The human ship was already damaged and running low on power, but Admiral Walsh had anticipated this. "All ships protect the Defiance," she ordered. "Form a defensive screen around Captain Morrison's vessel. The Earth ships moved quickly to surround. Their damaged sister ship, their shields combined to create a protective bubble around the Defiance. The Keth energy beams struck the Earth ships instead of their intended target. Captain Morris and Admiral Walsh said over the radio, "Fall back and let us handle this. You've done enough." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was exhausted. Parts of the ship were on fire. They had been fighting impossible odds for hours. Any reasonable person would accept the offer and retreat to safety, but Jake was not feeling reasonable. Down on the planet below, the Valen people were still in danger. As long as the Keth fleet existed, they could come back and finish what they started. "Thank you, Admiral," Jake replied, "but we're not done yet." "Ben, how much power do we have left?" Chief Engineer Ben Carter checked his displays. His uniform was torn and covered with grease, but his eyes still burned with determination. "We've got maybe 20 minutes of full power left, Captain. After that, we'll be running on emergency batteries. Then we better make those 20 minutes count," Jake said. "Lisa, I want you to target the Keth flagship. Amy, plot a course that takes us right through their formation one more time." Admiral Walsh heard the plan over the radio. "Captain Morrison, that's suicide. Let us handle the flagship." "With respect, Admiral," Jake said, "this started with the Defiance against impossible odds. We're going to finish it the same way." Allied fleet watched in amazement as the damaged human ship broke free from their protective formation and headed straight for the heart of the Keth fleet. The Defiance looked like a wounded animal, but it still had fight left in it. Commander Sam Torres and his fighters had been fighting for hours, too. Half of his squadron was gone, shot down by overwhelming enemy fire. But the remaining pilots were still in the battle. Phoenix leader to all fighters, Sam called over the radio, "Let's escort the captain on his final run. Form up on the Defiance." 6 surviving fighters took positions around the larger ship. Together, they dove into the Keth formation like a spear thrown by an angry god. The Keth ships tried to stop them, but the Allied fleet was attacking from all sides now. The Zephyrian cruisers fired beams of pure energy that cut through Keth hulls like knives through paper. The Altarian ships swarmed around the enemy like angry bees. Even the usually peaceful Rachel vessels fought with surprising skill. But Supreme Admiral Vexka only cared about one target. "All remaining ships," he screamed, "stop that human ship. I don't care if you have to ram it." Dozens of Keth vessels turned toward the Defiance. They fired everything they had at the approaching human ship. The space between the fleets became a storm of energy and metal. The Defiance shook like a toy in a hurricane. More hull plates flew off into space. Systems failed all over the ship. In the engine room, Ben Carter worked desperately to keep the reactors from exploding. "Shields are gone," he called out. "We're taking hits directly to the hull." Hull breach. "On deck 7, someone shouted. "Fire in the port weapons bay," came another cry. But still, the ship kept coming. Amy Stone flew the Defiance through the enemy fire like she was threading a needle. Her hands moved over the controls without conscious thought, guided by pure instinct and years of training. "Target acquired," Lisa Park announced. She had locked her weapons onto the Keth flagship. The massive enemy ship filled her targeting display. One good shot could end this battle. "Range, 5,000 kilometers and closing," Amy reported. Supreme Admiral Vexka watched the human ship approach his flagship. He could see the damage it had taken. Hull plates were missing, parts of it were on fire. How was it still fighting, sir? His weapons officer said, "They're going to fire at point-blank range. At this distance, they can't miss." Vexka realized that the humans had been planning this from the beginning. Every move they had made was designed to get them close to his flagship. Even when they seemed to be losing, they had been working toward this moment. "Fire all weapons," he ordered. "Destroy them before they can shoot." Keth flagship's main guns charged up with deadly energy. But they were designed to fight at long range. At point-blank distance, they could not turn fast enough to track the quick human ship. "Firing," Lisa announced. The Defiance's remaining weapons fired their last shots. 6 railgun slugs and 4 missiles crossed the short distance between the ships in less than a second. They struck the Keth flagship right in its command section. The massive enemy ship's shields flared and failed. Ow! The slugs punched through the thick armor like it was made of cardboard. Explosions bloomed along the flagship's hull as critical systems were destroyed. Supreme Admiral Vexka felt his ship shudder around him. Warning lights flashed red as damage reports flooded in. His main weapons were offline. Life support was failing. The ship's reactor was becoming unstable. "Sir," his tactical officer said with fear in his voice, "we need to abandon ship. The reactor is going to explode." Vexka looked at the tactical display one more time. His mighty fleet was being destroyed by enemies he had thought were weak. The humans had shown the galaxy something that the Keth had forgotten. Sometimes courage was more powerful than numbers. "Send the retreat signal," he said quietly. "All ships, withdraw from the system." Throughout the Keth fleet, ships began jumping to hyperspace. Survivors fled as fast as their engines could carry them. In less than an hour, the massive invasion force had been reduced to scattered wreckage floating in space. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake Morrison watched the last enemy ships disappear. His ship was barely holding together, but they had won. Against all odds, they had actually won. Captain Ryan Blake said with wonder in his voice, "I'm getting messages from all over the galaxy. Everyone wants to know how we did it." Jake smiled tiredly. "Tell them we did what humans do. We protected people who couldn't protect themselves." Down on the planet, the valiant people were celebrating. Their world was safe, and they would never forget the brave humans who had saved them. The silence after the battle was almost as loud as the fighting had been. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his damaged bridge and looked out at the stars. Where once there had been 500 enemy ships, now there was only empty space and floating wreckage. The USS Defiance was barely holding together. Holes in the hull let in the cold of space. Emergency lights flickered on and off. The smell of burned circuits filled the air, but the ship was still alive, and so was her crew. "Damage report," Jake said quietly. Chief Engineer Ben Carter wiped grease from his hands before answering. "Captain, it's bad. We've lost main power to 3 decks. The port engine is completely gone. Life support is running on backup systems. Honestly, sir, it's a miracle we're still breathing." Jake nodded. They had paid a high price for their victory, but when he thought about the alternative, he knew it had been worth it. "Casualties?" he asked. Dr. Helen Ross, the ship's medical officer, looked up from her reports. She was a tall woman with kind eyes that had seen too much pain today. 12 dead, 34 wounded. It could have been much worse. Jake felt the weight of those 12 lives. Each one had been someone's child, someone's friend. They had died protecting people they had never met. But their sacrifice had saved an entire world. "Captain Ryan Blake called from his communications station. I'm getting a signal from the planet. The Valen want to speak with you." Jake straightened his torn uniform and tried to look presentable. Put them on screen. An elderly Valen standing in what looked like a garden. The being had pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes. Behind him, Jake could see other Valens celebrating in the streets of their cities. "Brave Captain Morrison," the Valen said in a soft voice, "I am Keepa Nala, leader of our people. We do not have words in our language for what you have done. You risked everything to save strangers. This is a concept we thought existed only in our oldest stories." Jake felt uncomfortable with the praise. "We did what anyone should do, Keeper Nala. We couldn't stand by and watch innocent people suffer." Keeper Nala's large eyes grew even wider. "But Captain, that is exactly why your actions are so remarkable. In our galaxy, people do stand by and watch. The strong take from the weak, and others pretend not to see. Until today, we thought this was simply the way of the universe." Admiral Karen Walsh's voice came over the radio. "Captain Morrison, we're sending repair teams over to help fix your ship. But first, you should know what's happening out here." Jake looked at his tactical display. Ships from dozens of different races were still arriving in the system, but they were not coming to fight. They were coming to see the humans who had changed everything. "Capta," Admiral Walsh continued, "we're getting messages from governments all across the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition wants to meet with Earth's leaders immediately. The Zephyrian Council is offering to share their advanced technology with us. Even races we've never heard of are asking to establish diplomatic relations. Jake was amazed. All because of one battle, not just any battle, came a new voice. The screen changed to show an alien Jake had never seen before. The being looked like it was made of living crystal that glowed with soft light. "I am High Counselor Zara of the Zephyrian Council," the being said. Her voice sounded like music. "We have watched the galaxy for 10,000 years. In all that time, we have never seen such courage from such a young race. You have shown us something we had forgotten." "What's that?" Jake asked. "That sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do," Zara replied. "Your people chose to fight against impossible odds, not for gain, but because it was right. This is wisdom that takes most races centuries to learn." Over the next few hours, as repair crews worked to fix the Defiance, Jake received visitors from all over the galaxy. Leaders of great civilizations came to shake his hand. Scientists wanted to study human technology. Military commanders wanted to learn human tactics. But the most important visitor was Supreme Admiral Vexka himself. The Keth leader had been captured when his flagship was destroyed. Now he sat in the Defiance's small holding cell, his gray skin pale with defeat. Jake went to see him not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. "Why?" Vexka asked, when Jake appeared outside his cell. "Why did you risk everything for people you had never met?" Jake thought about the question for a long moment. "Because that's what makes us human," he finally said. "We believe that everyone deserves to be free. The strong should protect the weak, not prey on them." Vexka shook his head. "The Keth Empire has conquered hundreds of worlds. We are the strongest race in the galaxy. How can you say we are wrong? Being strong doesn't give you the right to hurt others," Jake replied. "Real strength is using your power to help people, not to control them." The Keth Admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "What will happen to me now?" "Up to the Galactic Coalition," Jake said. "But I hope they give you a chance to learn from this. The galaxy doesn't need more conquerors. It needs more protectors." 3 days later, the Defiance was repaired enough to travel. As they prepared to leave the Valen system, Jake received one more transmission from Keeper Nala. "Captain Morrison." The Valen leader said, "Our people have decided to do something we have never done before. We are going to learn to defend ourselves, not to attack others, but to protect the innocent as you have shown us." Jake smiled. "That sounds like a good plan, Keeper Nala. But remember, the best weapon is one you never have to use." "We will remember," Nala replied, "and we will remember you. Our children will grow up hearing the story of the humans who saved our world. It will become part of our history forever." As the Defiance left the system, Jake looked back at the planet. One more time. The Valen cities glowed softly in the darkness, peaceful and safe. He thought about the 12 crew members who had died to keep it that way. Their sacrifice had meaning now. Captain Lisa Park said from her weapons station, "Earth Command is sending us new orders. They want us to patrol the border regions. Apparently, a lot of smaller races are asking for human protection." Jake was not surprised. Word of the battle had spread across the galaxy faster than light. Everyone knew that humans would fight for others, even against impossible odds. "Amy, set course for Earth first," Jake ordered. "We need to report to headquarters and get fully repaired." As the Defiance jumped into hyperspace, Jake thought about what had changed. One battle had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy, not through conquest or fear, but through an example of courage and sacrifice. The Keth Empire would think twice before attacking innocent worlds. Other races would stand up to bullies instead of looking away. And humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Admiral Walsh had been right. I get all conwinding we invite It was the moment when humanity announced to the galaxy what they stood for, and the galaxy had listened. Years later, when historians wrote about this day, they would call it the Battle of Valen's World. They would study the tactics and analyze the technology. But they would miss the most important part. It was not about weapons or ships or strategy. It was about ordinary people choosing to do extraordinary things because it was right. It was about standing up to evil, no matter how powerful it seemed. It was about being human, Captain. Jake Morrison and the crew of the USS Defiance had shown the galaxy something it had forgotten. Sometimes, one person willing to do the right thing could change everything. And sometimes, that was enough to save the universe.